Welcome to the Spinwhiz Comics Show. Whoa. From Raleigh, North Carolina. Join us for exclusive interviews with the publishers bringing you the newest titles in indie comics, webcomics, movies, and more.
No way.
And now, here's your host, Jeff Palumbo.
All right, so for everybody just joining, just because that's fantastic and I've never heard it before, they met in a Lego store where Barry was working, where David came in with his twins. They started talking. Your wife got involved, who is the catalyst for the entire situation. So if this thing blows up, you owe her everything, is what you're telling me.
Pretty much.
Just like any good marriage, that's how it goes anyway. So, and I've been married for almost 10 years, so trust me, I get it. All right, so you guys are. You find issue 1. Was it, David, did you have issue 1 done, or did you have a plot line? Like, how much editing do you and Barry really have to, because you said you tore it apart. How much editing was there?
So issue 1 was a total of 60 pages.
Okay.
So Barry came in and just tore it apart, because the way my mind works is I see things in film. Mm-hmm. So I move fast with everything that I write, and then as I go fast, I have to go back. Barry had to go back and fill in certain plot points for me because I was moving so fast. And so when Barry came on, he slowed it down, and we actually centered on where we wanted to go, because in my mind, I already knew the ending of this entire series, and I was trying to get to that end. Mm-hmm. And I'll let Barry pick it up from there.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, he had written as you said, 60 pages. There was a fair amount of stuff to work with, but certain things, again, there are maybe 6 subplots or something. And so he was trying to cram all of that into 60 pages for this first book. And it was like, well, some of these subplots need to move beyond. And I kept having to remind him, because with any creative project and any writing project you do, you can sometimes certain characters want to take over. And you can go down that rabbit hole of, now we're talking about this, and now here, and then next thing you know, you've got 25 pages or something of just this one character. But if it's not their story, it's supposed to be someone else's, you kind of have to tack back. So some of those things I split up to say, these are later books, this is where the story goes. And so it was then like honing in on his focus and seeing, as he said, he works quickly and he had all these ideas in his mind, but it wasn't there on the page. And it was like, great. So now we have to explain, what is this conspiracy? How is this thing connected? Historically, where did this lead up to just clarify his ideas? Because basically my thing was, he had a really amazing sandbox to begin with, mm-hmm. and a really great idea for this story. And it's just, we want to like sharpen it up and make it as like robust as it can be.
Okay. So, and then you have these 2 wonderful gentlemen to what looks like my right, even though it's my left on the screen, but it's to right to everybody else. How did you hook up with Sean and Biff?
So Sean and I met, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, Sean, at Heroes Con in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And I was there with one of my twins, and I happened to come by Sean's table, and him and I started talking and just hit it off. And we stayed in touch off and on. But then when I finally got this concept where I wanted it, I knew I wanted Sean as an artist, but my one of my close friends who was also helping us produce this book wanted to look at other artists. So as we went through other artists, they turned out not to be what we were looking for. So I reached out to Sean. Sean jumped on board, and Sean's been on ever since. Biff and I met at Comic-Con. What Comic-Con was that, Biff? It was in Florence, South Carolina. Yep. PowerCon. And I was there with another good friend of mine, Wally McNair, and Wally McNair was taking me around, showing me the ropes of how the cons work. And I'm sitting at the table with Wally, and Biff comes over and starts talking to us, and Wally and him decide they're going to switch art with each other. And at the end of the day, we all decide to go out and have dinner. And so at dinner, mm-hmm. Biff and I start talking, and I love Biff's art. And I said, Biff, will you do a cover for me? And Biff's like, yeah, I'll do a cover. And then as Biff got involved with the cover, Biff came to me and said, "Hey, Dave, I've got a great idea how to make your book look even better." I was like, "Okay." And then he's like, "Send me one of the storyboards." And I sent it over there, and that's when he did the painting and design on it. And I was like, You're on. Come join us. We want you to be part of this." And Biff jumped on board. And I got to tell you, between Biff and Barry and Sean, this thing has just been a roller coaster ride. It just keeps going and going.
Well, it's fantastic. So I can only imagine that it's going to keep going even farther. We have a bunch of publishers on the site that I'm partnered with. A lot of great content that's popping up, but you guys definitely stick out not only with style but with story, and I think that's really what's going to change things. For you guys, again, the whole goal is getting people to read it and understand what it is and kind of get you going. But that's a startup of anything. Any brand has that startup, that pull, the hook. But I think you do it really well, and I think everybody is intrigued by the end. So Biff and Sean, Sean, did you start drawing before Biff came on? Like, did you have a storyboard and then David sent Sean's storyboard to Biff and then Biff colored it, and that's how everybody kind of got pulled in?
Yeah, pretty much. I was drawing it, and because sometimes what happens is that I see things from a fan standpoint. Dave, besides him doing the writing, him and Barry, they handle all the logistics of the business, right, of the company. So they just let me go ahead and draw, and they take care of a lot of behind the scenes stuff. So I didn't see Biff stuff till later on. He was like, Dave gave me like a little heads up. "Hey, Sean, I'm thinking about bringing this guy on. I want you to see what this thing looks like. I think you're going to love it." And then when he showed it to me, it was like I saw it as a fan, and I was like, "Yo, this is amazing. This is gorgeous." So it was a thrill for me to see it.
That's awesome. And how long have you been drawing, Sean?
It's one of the things. I was drawing since I was a little kid. I just love art. I was that kid in class where everybody was like, "Can you draw this for me?" That type of thing. And but it wasn't until years that I was born and raised in Barbados, and comic books wasn't seen as a means of actual employment. So I came to America, and I got caught up in just the dream of America, right? Just there's money growing on the trees and the streets paved with gold type of thing, and then you find out that no, you gotta work. And my dad was he wasn't trying to hear about my dreams of drawing comics and shit. So he went on and got me like a job working at this department store, and I just got caught up trying to like pay bills and all that type of thing. And it wasn't until years later I ended up being a cook at a ballet school, and I got laid off, and I was doing some drawings for a couple of clients, and I say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I'll take this time to actually, dedicate to art." And that's how I got really doing art full time.
Holy
because
crap.
I got laid off.
See how things work? I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Like my like I said before we jumped on, my comic had to fail in order for me to build this platform.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just amazing how things work out. So Biff, on to you. You're kind of an industry vet. Like you're you've been around for just a little bit. Like you have quite the repertoire of things you've done. You want to go into a little bit about what you've done in the past, just so everybody can kind of tell that you are a rookie. And then how is it working with these guys?
No, it's been great. But yeah, a little background. Similar to Sean, I kind of always drew as a kid. That was my thing. It was pencil and paper all the time, all the way. And, even when I was finishing high school, I was in the back of class, math class, just drawing doodles all the time, kind of amazed I made it through high school. But I didn't really know that I could turn art into a profession. Like, I didn't think that was a reality. Like, I thought about, and I didn't want to do anything mainstream either. So I was thinking I'll be a fireman or something like that. I just had no idea. But I ended up going to a trade school, and they taught me computer graphics, which because of drawing, I got into comics, and because of comics, I got into kind of this visual effects kind of work. So I ended up working for video games and some animated film for about 8 years. And then since 2008, I've been in the film industry, and I've worked for some of the bigger VFX houses in the world, working on, pretty mainstream films like Spider-Man, Infinity War, things like that. But I kind of felt like I wanted to get back to my roots. I wanted to spend my days drawing, working on comics again. Like, that's really why I got into those industries to begin with. Mm-hmm. So I ended up, I was in San Francisco and Vancouver, Canada for about 8 years, and it was just time to leave. So came back to South Carolina, where I was born, Myrtle Beach. Now I'm in Charleston, and decided to start fresh and started working on my own comic books. And that's when I started doing the touring of the comic conventions. And I really crammed them in that last year. I want to say like 8 different conventions in that last year, one of which I, of course, met Dave. And at that point, I was promoting my Dark Sub Rosa comic, which is still kind of in the works. We'll get into that later. Mm-hmm. But Dave was talking to me. He had this idea. He asked me to look at his script. I happily did. And, it was good. I read, I believe, the first 2 issues, which would have been about 4 comics. And, I got right back to him. I told him, it's fantastic. And then he sent me some artwork over that he had some of the guys work on, and he asked for a critique. And I, overall, like, Sean's work just blew my mind. I was stoked on all of it. And he had a couple other pieces, which he asked me, like, if I was working on it, what would I do? So I just jumped into Photoshop for a few hours, a few days, and just kind of tweaked some pages out and sent it back to him and said, I think if you went this direction, this book could really mean something. It could get there. You could see the big time potentially. And a couple months later, I think he kind of jokingly, and I thought he was joking on the phone. He was like, well, you could paint it. And I was like, thanks, Dave. You're kidding. I know. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, was Dave serious? Like, maybe we could actually work on this together. So I literally called him back a few days later. I asked him, are you serious? Like, you want me to paint your book? And he was like, hell yeah. So I was like, all right, buddy. Well, let's do this, And honestly, it just seemed perfectly like the ideal situation to me. Jumping in, like, working on my own, any of you who've done it know it is hard to write, draw, color, do the bubbles, everything it takes, get it printed, publish, distribute your own book. And to just have Dave with this beautiful team he's put together with, Barry and Sean and the cover artists like Wally and Bernie. It seemed like this ideal scenario for me to jump in and say, hey, we can make this team effort something that's real in the end. And I just didn't want to pass that up. And I feel like it's a beautiful thing. So let's see where it goes, fellas.
We should break into song now. Like a Disney movie.
Wait, can I say something real quick?
Yeah, man.
I gotta give a shout out to the on-scene backers of the book. To start off with, there was a financier, Evolve Comics. Evolve Tattoo Studios, right?
Yeah,
Evolve Body Art. And so I will say this right on public ear that they actually pay their creators, and I've worked for a few years now in the industry with people that come to you and they say, hey man, your art is great, but I don't have any money right now. Can you work for free? Can you do a back-end deal? Or can you be just lab? And I get it, not everybody has the finances, not everybody's able to afford it. People don't realize like how expensive it is to do a comic book. Even one issue takes a lot. And those guys approached me right off the bat with respect of like, hey, how much is your rate? And, you know, I really appreciate them for, you know, always being so on point as far as the finances.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to add to that, and that was a great segue there, Sean. Evolved Body Art, we would not be here if it wasn't for Evolved Body Art and the owner of the company. Evolved Body Art is a tattoo piercing place in Columbus, Ohio, and it's owned by my best friend from high school and college, Nick Wallet. And if it was not from him, we would not be where we are right now. We were very fortunate to have someone come in and finance us pretty much to the finish line and then let us take it across the line after that. So a big shout out to Nick Wallach and Evolved Body Art for getting us here.
You got it. I'm dropping his link in the chat right now.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube, they're below. I mean, you've been to YouTube before. You know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe, you know, links below, that type of thing. So, yeah, good shout out. And I think, you know, a lot of people in this industry, like Sean said, do not really understand everything that it takes to put together a comic. And to Biff's point, coming in and meeting a team that has their shit together, and you're like the last Lego. No offense, Barry. I mean, I wasn't really throwing that. In fact, that's just a bonus to you. Had to have been like, holy shit, is this really happening? And to Barry as well, you know, coming in and meeting Dave, and you're like, really? Like, this is sick. It's funny how things sometimes line up, but it doesn't happen all the time. You know, I hear about deals every day that people come to me and they're like, hey, Jeff, you know, can you bail us out of this situation? Can you buy this? I'm like, no, I can't. I'd love to, but I can't. And, or, hey, can you help me through this? You know, do you know a legal team? And I'm like, holy shit. And that happens more times than not, that somebody's like, yeah, I'll pay, and then they don't pay. Or they'll go to a Kickstarter and the Kickstarter doesn't fulfill, or somebody backs out last minute and you're 23 pages of 26 deep and you don't know what, you know, you got to scramble for that other person and your rates were already set. And it just, there's so many things that de-evolve. Yeah, thank you. A situation that yours spun up the right way and it just kind of happened the perfect way. And that doesn't happen a lot. And I really need to tell people that does not happen a lot. Would you guys agree that from all your experiences in comics or outside, am I right that this is like a kind of like seeing a shooting star?
This was organic.
Like,
yeah.
This was
things
like,
fell together at the right time, I would say. Sorry to interrupt, Dave, but
no, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, you know, with him meeting Barry, you know, and they had some time. They had a couple of years to talk about this, and, you know, or a bit of time. Then they brought on Sean, and you guys have been at it for a little while. And it's like, you know, I feel lucky that they had that together by the time I came on, you know, because it was always, the writing was done. Sean was pretty much done with all the art by the time I got there. And it was really about turning that into a book, you know, because you got writing, you got a script, and we'd had some of the text bubbles there, but taking it from that point and just turning it into something more, I think, was really why I was so happy to be a part of it, because they clearly had proven themselves as a hardworking team willing to get this project done. They just needed that one extra guy who happened to be me, who could come in and just, like you said, that last little puzzle piece. And I think as a team, we're killing it. And not to be too over the top about it, but I love the product we just produced, and I'd like to see us finish out the whole 12 issues. So
makes a huge difference.
And I would like to add to that the stars must have aligned or something, because we were able to get the financial backing, and then meeting Barry, and then from Barry, you know, Sean was already on board, then meeting Barry, then meeting Biff. I mean, if you look at the talent that's behind this with Barry, Sean, and Biff, and then you throw in Wally McNair and Bernie Cook and a couple other people, there's a lot of talent behind this book. And this is not just like a hodgepodge of group of guys getting together saying, hey, we're going to write a comic book. These are serious people that have a lot of talent. And I feel very fortunate that they're part of a team with me to get this book to where it is.
Yeah, that does not happen.
And you know what, too, can I say something real quick?
Of course.
There's so many like you guys said, there's so many elements that are going to making a comic book and making this an experience. And you got to look at the working factor too. Like any business, sometimes there's trials and tribulations and ups and downs. So it's all about the personalities of people that you pick, right? And shout out to Dave on this, because he allowed me to go in, even with this great script that him and Barry had chiseled away at. There were still elements that I came into it then as a storyteller, as a penciler, and was like, yo, you know what? This scene would work better if we slowed it down here a little bit, or if I showed this. And Dave was willing to listen to me and give me enough wiggle room to try certain things and make suggestions without ever saying, shut up and draw. You know what I mean? And, you know, as a creator, as an artist, that's an amazing feeling too, to feel that you have some person that trusts you as a valued member of the team.
Yeah.
Well,
I got a comment on top of Sean's toning it down a bit. What he did with the book is he took their script and he really just slowed things down. There's not a lot of dialogue in the script.
That's correct.
You know, little bubbles here and there. But the reason it works is because Sean storyboarded every thought process the characters are having as they're going through these scenes. Mm-hmm. And that was part of, you know, my joy in working on the book too, is it didn't feel rushed. It's a nice slow pace. You understand what the characters are feeling through each panel. And, you know, not any artist could pull that off, at least not as well as Sean did. And again, you know, the writing, the combination with the drawings, that was my intrigue to be a part of it. And, you know, praise be to all of you guys who got this thing to the place it was before I even came on board. It's really looking yay.
Yeah. Barry, what do you think?
I think like the other thing too is I think amongst the team, there's a lot of respect for what each person brings to the table.
I don't like you.
Well, you know.
I respect you. I just don't like you.
That works. You know, some days always more than others. Anytime there is a team, but it's that thing of like acknowledging, oh, this is where you're really good at. Like Dave's really good at ideation. He created this whole sandbox that we live in. And then for me, like polishing. But it's also that thing of Dave and I were very honest with each other, where we're like, we know the story we want to tell. We might not be the best in terms of understanding the visual side of it. And so giving Sean and Biff the ability to like take it and make it better, because they know they've worked in the comic industry a lot longer than we have. Again, this is Dave and my first time out. And so we're very rookie with it. We've read a lot of comics, but we haven't necessarily developed the eye. And so by trusting our amazing artists to go and emphasize what we've already created, I think they've turned out a product that, again, to me, it's like they've made the writing better. They've made everything better than what we could have done. Because if I were to draw it, it'd be mostly stick figures. You know, that's pretty much how I would approach it. It's like, here's a stick figure and maybe a little bit of detailing here, but I couldn't do what they do. And so it's their understanding of the moments, the beats that each character goes through, what would make the most visual impact has just added to the world that we were creating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I would add that, first of all, I just want everybody to know Barry's like a little brother to me. I love him to death. Okay.
Still don't like him, but he's like a little brother to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's blood. I got to take it.
Right.
Yeah. But one of the things I did when I went into this is that I sat down with Barry, we talked, like he said, but I also did research. I looked at Michael Bendis, I looked at Scott Snyder, I looked at Tom King, I looked at all the writers in the industry, and to get understanding how they write and work with artists. And one of the things that stood out to me, I think Scott Snyder said that, or Bendis said, when they first got in, they would write all the detail they could and send it to the artists. And I think one of the artists sent their work back saying, don't do that. You know, let me have the room to breathe. And so the way I designed the storyboard was to allow the artist creative freedom visually. You know, I would just give them enough to say, hey, this is what the framework is, go. And you see that in the book with Sean. I remember the conversation, Sean, I think you might, where there's a scene in the book where, well, it's in book 2, but there's a scene in the book where the Neanderthals throw off the cliff. And there's another scene, I don't want to spoil it, where I was going to do something with those Neanderthals. And Sean's like, Dave, that's not going to work. He's like, you got to give the reader a little bit of ability to think for themselves. And if you want to do that scene, it's going to take 3 or 4 pages. And so go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just saying, I remember we were talking about, and one of my fears was always like, okay, is this going to look like I'm just trying to pad the book, or I'm trying to squeeze more money out of them or something, because it was like, it's one of those things where I also don't want to step on anybody's toes. This is their vision, so I don't want to seem like I'm like, this, you don't know what you're doing. But I always try to approach things as a fan. You know what I mean? Like, how would I want to read this? Like, I'm one of those guys, like, I try not to do it, but I can't really watch too many popcorn type movies where it's just like, well, just ignore the gravity, Sean. Just ignore physics. Just enjoy the movie. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I never want to come off like that's how I was being with the book. But like I said, it was a case where Dave had enough trust, and I don't know the conversations between him and Barry. Like, he had to go back and be like, all right, man, look, don't curse this guy out. But he said we need a couple extra pages. So thankfully, I didn't have to be privy to those conversations. But all I knew was that Dave was like, he was pretty willing to be like, yo, you know what, whatever. Yeah, that made sense. And he listened. It wasn't a case where he was like also so standoffish, where he was like, whatever you want to do. He really listened. I could tell that he wanted. He was invested in this as a fan himself, who wants to see the best product come up.
That's awesome.
And the one thing I want to add, sorry, Jeff, is that
it's good.
When we wrote this comic book, Barry and I, and then when Biff and Sean came on, all 4 of us have a passion for comics. And I think the one key thing I could say all 4 of us share in common is we want to see something that we would pick up and read.
Yep.
So that's where you see the passion and the hard work in this book, because we created something that we would go see a movie or actually pick it up off the book rack and buy it. And it is an amazing thing. The pages are amazing. Our book is more like, I would say, if you see the art, it's a comic book masquerading. It's a RPG game masquerading as a comic book.
Ooh, I like that.
So, I mean, there are scenes in the first issue where the eyes or the way the positioning of the hand that Sean has drawn, and the way Biff has come in and painted it and designed it, where the hand looks like it's going to totally come off the page.
Mm-hmm.
It to me, I would buy this as a video game, because it could be an open world video game, period. Mm-hmm. But it's an amazing book, and I have enjoyed writing it, and I can't stop, because we've got so many more stories to tell with this.
Keep it going.
I mean, H.P. Lovecraft has created this whole world of cosmic horror. And so when I was writing this storyboard, I remember going to Barry and saying to Barry, I need a villain. What kind of villain? I already had villains, but I needed a big villain. And then I threw out the idea of, why don't we play with H.P. Lovecraft? And Barry is sort of like the devil's advocate, or, that my conscience or something. Where I throw something out and he'll sit there and look at me and stare at me and goes, okay, why? Convince me why we should go down this road. So that would require me to sit there and hash it out with him. And when we did, that's where we got into using cosmic horror, because we wanted something that was a non-traditional villain. Well, not necessarily a villain, but something that was different from anything else you've seen.
Yeah. When
it comes to superhero mythology or the Cthulhu mythos.
Yeah, and you
also I think part of it too is with like H.P. Lovecraft, and the Cthulhu mythos is it's been done so many times as well that it's great. How do we then stand out? What is our version and our take on what this is? And then how will that enhance the story that you want to tell? And so a lot of it was just us breaking down, okay, what's our version and what works and what doesn't, and what do we want to keep? And again, it's this is the bare bones structure, and then what can we add or take away to emphasize our own story?
Well, plus with Lovecraft, you're entering into a very dangerous area, and that the fan base is so rabid that if you screw it up, you're in deep shit, because they will tear you limb from limb. Gamers are well known for speaking their, whatever they want. And if they love a brand, they're like, oh, I like it. But if they hate it, they're like, oh my God, Reddit, F you, blah, 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 I'm going to eat your babies. And they're just, the same thing happens with Lovecraft. And, just like you can even enter into now Star Wars, and that's a whole nother thing. But
I actually worked on a video game one time where I got online to see reviews and found out that there was a letter out written to all the fans listing all of the people that needed to be murdered because they worked on this video game, and my name was on that list. So I know what you mean. Video games are pretty harsh.
I've worked in the games industry for about a decade, not producing video games or animation, but usually marketing and working with companies and engagement strategies and stuff like that. And it's brutal. So the Lovecraft line has to be good, almost like Oz. When you start getting into Oz, people expect a little something and there are some people that go the wrong way, and it just gets pushed. They might bitch about it a little bit, but you get 7 or 8 people in that group to say it sucks. Nobody reads it. So it's even worse than getting bitched at, because you don't get the coverage. Right. But I think with something like this, you will. And because I really think it's fantastic. It threw me for a couple loops. It feels to me like a slow heartbeat, where you're really just like, there's a rhythm to each frame. And Sean, I give you huge credit on that. I'm not big on lots and lots of words. I like the action and the motion to be seen, and the words are just there to fill a gap of either thought or tension, or just a bit of background where the motion itself can't catch it. That's how I like to write.
And you can thank Barry for that, because when I first wrote this, I was writing massive dialogue for all the characters. And Barry was like, okay, let's sit back. We can say this simpler. And so we were able to simply say what needed to be said in the story and keep moving with the story. And with what you said about Lovecraft, I think what we did with this is that I looked at everything that was out there for Lovecraft. And I was like, okay, this person wrote a story about Lovecraft when he was a kid and his father was crazy, and then he ended up in the world with Cthulhu. Or, there's so many different stories out there. And I think, and it was Barry who finally, I guess, got the light to go on in my head. He's like, look, we can tell this any way we want to tell it, as long as we are true to the essence of what Lovecraftian horror is. There's no strict rules to how this story should go. So let's just have fun and tell the tale how we want to tell the tale.
And it comes.
But that's the beautiful thing. That's the beautiful thing about comics too, because I feel like in this medium, right, you have the freedom to do whatever it is you want to do. So going back to something you mentioned earlier, Jeff, where you talked about Oz, right? I just sent Dave a link to a comic book, and I think it's called Cthulhu in Oz, and it mixes.
Yeah. Travis Gibb is doing that.
Oh, so I'm like, that's amazing. And I always love when people cross match genres, which goes back to, I think one of the things that really drew me to this project was the fact that it has a little bit of everything. It has the steampunk essence, it has the superheroes, it has the Lovecraftian lore, and all blended together in something that feels fresh. So that, you know, as a fan, once again, that appealed to me, just be able to combine all these great drawing references.
Yeah. Well, and I got to say too, I like the idea that, you know, there's the minimal bubbles and dialogue. It's kind of more dramatic, and I wouldn't say necessarily horror, but there's a darkness to the book. It's like that you're waiting, just like the characters are, to see what's going to happen next. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Robert Kirkman and Invincible and Walking Dead, and his characters can, like, one bubble can go on for like 3 pages. Like, he knows how to make his characters talk, and I love that too. Like, Invincible is my favorite book of all time, but this is almost like The Walking Dead in the sense of the darkness and the horror, but, you know, nobody needs to, like, spit out all their feelings and where they were 3 weeks ago and how they've evolved to the way they are now. It's more like in the moment, how someone's dealing with the situation they're in and where they go from here. And until they open their mouth, Sean's panels just kind of like drag you along on that adventure as they're going through it. And I find it really inspiring. It's a fun thing to paint, because honestly, when I got the pages, I didn't even have the whole script. I didn't even have dialogue on all the pages. So I was literally interpreting the story based on Sean's drawings without even knowing the whole story and the dialogue outside of separately reading the script. So for me, it's like I could get what was happening with 0 dialogue almost, and it still worked. So it's just a new way to look at it. It's kind of like storyboarding, honestly, like in the film industry. We treated every panel that way, even though it's lined up like a comic book panels. We looked at each panel as if it was the next shot of the movie. And at least Sean did when he drew it. And then when I went to paint it, you know, when I would pick and choose where to use, motion blur or background blur versus the foreground, or add some dust sparkles in the front while the rest is blurred in the background. It was all just to give more depth to the visuals. And sometimes not having the dialogue to go along really allows the artist to push that visual element, and then you drop the dialogue in and it all just comes together.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we've been talking, like I told you, we just start shooting it and it's just like crazy. So we're running out of time. Should we actually get to what the story is about?
Yes, sure. Yeah.
All right, Dave, do it up.
So the story basically is about 3 different time periods. You have the Paleolithic, early 1930s, and the future 2262. Basically, the story evolves around the discovery of the elder horrors on Earth. Then that leads to Howard Lovecraft discovering the Necronimnon. And then that his actions leads to what happens in the future. So basically, in the future, you have this ex-super soldier covert operative who's recruited by his former employers, called Arkham, to deal with a nameless Cthulhu cult that's gone off the rails to do their own thing. They're called the Tainted Covenant, and they're trying to bring back the Great Old Ones, and it's his job to stop them. Hopefully, I didn't did I give the plot away there, Biff? Or
I think you're okay.
No, I think you did great. Yeah, that was perfect. Better than I could have done it. And I think your transition between the 3 periods does really, really well, because it keeps you guessing, but you kind of get it. And obviously, I didn't know all of that specifically, but I knew something was going on, and I knew that it ties in. And I'm like, well, where's issue 2? Like, and that's the best, right? You want
it's almost there.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait. I have a lot of painting to do, but like, I got to say the rest of the team they've already nailed it. So, give me a little bit and I'll be on top of that.
But that's the best thing, right? When people read it, you want to be like, well, where's you 2? And then, when did this come out? When is it? And I hope that, I want success for you. I think one of the reasons I haven't so I wrote Chimera, which is a psychological thriller. Part horror, part psychological thriller, because who I grew up reading was Stephen King. And I've read everything. and my writing is not Stephen King by any means, but people that have read it can see hints of that type of feel. Because again, you read something enough, you start to somewhere learn how that happens. You like how it does, and that's the way your thinking goes when you're trying to do. And I think the same way as David and Biff, in that I see it as a movie. But I've been putting so much of my time and effort into the platform and watching guys like you succeed that it has kind of pole vaulted me past my own content and wanting to see the success of everybody else. And with this comic, it is going to be successful because it's not going to. Like, if you keep cranking out stuff like this and it looks this drastically different and it reads this well and you get through the pages and you're like, wait, there's no more, then you have something on your hands because people want to see more. And it's easy to understand. And I think as you get into it, if you keep that heartbeat in that slow pace, at least, in my opinion, for the first 3-4 issues, I think you're going to start seeing that pick up most likely around your 5 to 8, and then your 9 to 12 is going to be like your heart's going to be jumping through, and you're going to be like, I got to read it again because I don't know, might I miss something? And you're like, wait, did I miss something? And you're like, no, we just left it out, so you don't know it yet. And you're like, son of a bitch, and and they're cussing you out, which is a great thing.
Right. And we have a lot of drop the mic moments in the books.
Yes.
And I would like to also say is that you'll see a lot of influence of John Carpenter and Quentin Tarantino in my writing. I'm a huge, for me, it was John Carpenter's The Thing, John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness, and Escape from New York.
Yeah.
And then Quentin Tarantino's all his movies, especially Kill Bill 1 and 2, and H.P. Lovecraft. So you'll see a lot of stuff from our childhood, the 80s in there too. 80s movies, 80s horrors, which were so campy.
Amazing.
Yeah, black exploitation films were some of the influence for me in building up my character, like Shaft and Jim Brown and Jim Kelly. There's a lot of influences in this story that I just pulled from to create this world with Barry.
I think it's one of those stories too, because you're dealing with the 3 different timelines, and you've only got one comic book to talk about 3 different timelines. You only get a certain amount of pages dedicated to each one per comic, so it kind of feels like a slow build. But we're hoping to leave you at the end of each one of those timelines in any given book with a bit of a mic drop, if not a big one. But a few books on, it's all going to start coming together.
Yeah. Well, you have
really going to start getting those big hits, and we're going to spend more time on one story than the other. But right now, we're just in that slow build anticipation mode.
Right.
Well, what I think it's a change of pace too, because I think nowadays we live in a culture where it's like we have to be entertained every second, and everything has to be ratcheted up to this crazy level. And I think sometimes for the people who grew up on reading comics and read even novels and reading Stephen King, sometimes I think people are ready to appreciate, like, you can have your fun, but you can do it in doses too. You know what I mean? Like, part of the joy for me of reading comics or watching certain movies is I want to take the journey with the characters. The Fast and Furious stuff, like I said, I can't do a lot of that stuff anymore. You know what I mean? One of my favorite movies that came out recently was Widows. I don't know if y'all saw Widows. But it's a great movie. Tons of people, tons of stars in there. Viola Davis, Colin Farrell, Liam Neeson. Like, an amazing, beautiful film. And I think about, for the second book, there's a scene in there that's not even like an action scene, but one of my favorite pages. And it's of one of the Neanderthals that we're going to follow. He's going down a set of stairs. That's it. It's just him, but the way I wanted to draw it in a way, like, you're taking this journey down to this. Something's coming. Something's going to be down there. He's going to discover, but we don't know what. And you see, like, he's nervous. it's like what's going on, and it's just him going down this set of stairs. And I just hope that people are really looking for, they're willing to try something new and let us get back to taking stories, a bite at a time, instead of like, what's the big moment? What's the come shot? It's like,
well, we're not. We all grew up in the age before Netflix, if you can believe it. So we'd actually have to wait a week before we saw the next episode of a TV show.
Yo, yes.
Comic books, it's still the same way. You're going to wait another month or even 2 before you get that next chapter. But when you do, it's so rewarding, And I just hope everybody can dig into that and be ready for what we're going to bring.
Yeah. Well, that's why Netflix is moving away from binge.
Oh, really?
And they're trying to go away from it because they see that people are, just gobbling it all up. But then there's that sense of the environment is then gone, and somebody talks about it for a week and then it's over. And what they want is that building over time. That's why, in my opinion, that's why Star Wars was so popular. And besides the fact that it was so drastically different, but they made you wait 3 years per movie. And then books came out, and they kept saying, "Well, eventually it could happen, eventually." But the chaos still maintained. And I think when you watch something that's very quick, don't get me wrong, there's great stuff that you can read or watch immediately right now, or read immediately, but it misses some of that tension, I guess, is probably what I would say.
Well, I think also with that, there's like, I remember growing up, there was Deep Space Nine, and you watch it after week, and because it is drawn out, you invite them into your home for years, and then it's like, oh, it's over. There's my family, and it's gone. Like, and I remember like that series finale to me struck such a chord because it was just that thing of, oh, this thing is now done, and it meant so much because I'm tuning in, as opposed to like, oh, I just binged this entire series in 2 days. Okay, that was fun. I'll wait another, like, I'll remove it from my queue so I can add something else until next year, and I'll do it again.
And I would like to add, I know we're running out of time. For me, it was 24. That was the series for me. And you'll see some of that influence in there too. But you could not binge watch 24 on Netflix. That would just be, it's just like the way every episode ended, and then the ending of the season, you're like, oh, well, what's going to happen to Jack? He's wandering off somewhere. Is he going to come back? So for us, I look at this as our Alfred Hitchcock Presents book. Either Barry and I are in the fat suit standing there telling you what you're going to journey, or a Rod Serling, and here we go, and you're going to take this ride into the 5th dimension and go from there. Yes, I am dating myself. Sorry.
But yet I know exactly what you're talking about, so it doesn't matter.
But you know what? And it's like, I want to make sure that I'm not mislabeling the book too, because I'm here thinking about it, right? I just pulled up the script, actually, and I was thinking about the first 2 pages. I'm not going to give anything away, but in the first 2 pages, we have like a slow kind of intro into this world, right? And then I just realized by page 3, we're into some people getting slaughtered. And then there's like a chase. And then there's like some more building. Like, I'm here looking at this book again as a fan. And I think we were able to balance the pace with the speed that's necessary. And kudos to Dave and Barry for the script that y'all delivered. And once again, allowing me to come in and extend certain things where it needs to. But I think people are going to really be able to get the best of both worlds from this book.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that, Jeff, is that 2001 Space Odyssey also played a part in first storyline. The part of the primitive hominid discovering, the bone, and then and then learns that he could kill with the bone. That whole montage really inspired me. And that is one of the things I think helped me write this first storyline for the first book.
Awesome. Man, that's some deep shit. We got really deep there. All right. Well, listen, that was a ton of stuff. Obviously, I want people to go read it. And again, these guys are trying to work something out. So the digital copies are there right now. We'll have print on demand coming, which we're obviously going to pass you guys to the bleed trim, and we'll get that up too, so we get print. But in the meantime, read it on Spinwhiz Comics. The links are there. If you're on YouTube, the links are here down below. And read it. And if you like it, buy the PDF. Hook these guys up. That's the only way they're going to make more. And I can't bankroll it because I don't have that kind of cash, even though I would. So any final thoughts before we take off? Because, you guys have been awesome. I appreciate you being on. It's late at night. Y'all have something else to do, but I appreciate you being here with me and the Spinwhiz crew and the community that's building around it. Anything else before we take off?
Thank you for having us on. And if anybody out in their audience really want to read a good book, please pick this up because once you pick it up, you're going to want more.
Yes, you are. I am proof of that.
I just want to say thank you. And I want to say, I hope people come out and support not just Decimation Earth, of course, but Spinwhiz Comics in general, because we need more indie characters, stories out here, more support for the indie market. I'm a huge Image fan. Like I was there at the beginning when these 7 guys formed, and I've always been about the indie spirit. As much as I love the big 2, that's great and all, but there's nothing like independent, the independent market. So thank you guys at Spinwhiz too for giving us the opportunity.
No doubt, happy to do it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you spending your time with us tonight. I've had a good time. I hope everybody else has. And anybody watching, I think you'll love the book. It's only a couple bucks on Spinwhiz. It's well worth it if I gotta say so myself. It's a fun time.
It's great.
Good looking. Enjoy.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for having us. It was a blast. Oh, the light just turned on.
There you go.
No, I think it's great. A lot of people are still at home, so you got time. Check out something new that you don't normally see.
Yeah, we'll have the app soon too, so that'll make it even easier to access.
And
it'll look perfect as well, both on iOS and Android, and that'll be free as well. So
nice. That's what's up.
Anyway, y'all stick with me just 1 second. Everybody watching, hang with me. I'm going to be right back. I got to say goodbye to these guys offline. I'm going to come back. It's going to be Fatty B and Gorilla Mosh. We're going to be playing, probably watching me get my ass kicked in Warzone. And but until then, give me 1 second. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Spinwhiz Comics Show. We'll be right back with more. Hang with me just 1 second.